Hey crew, it's Pitt and I'm back with some more ancient lore. Today we are diving back into the works of Homer. This is the Iliad. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various points that are brought to light by the text. Well, not really discussing a whole lot. This is more just a reading into the record. It's not the format for everyone, but people find value in it, so you are more than welcome to tag along as we continue our exploration. Before we begin, however, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there will be several playlists linked in the corner above, in the box down below, along with the original source material and the link for my book, so that you can get a better understanding of who I am and why I say the things that I do. With that being said, let us dive in and continue our exploration of Homer's The Iliad with Book 18. Thus did they fight, as it were a flaming fire. Meanwhile, the fleet runner, Antilochus, who had been sent as messenger, reached Achilles, and found him sitting by his tall ships and boding that which was indeed too surely true. Alas, said he to himself in the heaviness of his heart, why are the Achaeans again scouring the plain and flocking towards the ships? Heaven grant the gods be not now bringing that sorrow upon me which my mother Tethys spoke, saying that while I was yet alive, the bravest of the Myrmidons would fall before the Trojans, and see the light of the sun no longer. I fear the brave son of Menenidas has fallen through his own daring, and yet I bade him return to the ships as soon as he was driven back those that were bringing fire against them, and not join battle with Hector. As he was thus pondering, the son of Nestor came up to him and told his sad tale, weeping bitterly the while. Alas, he cried, son of noble Peleus, I bring you bad tidings, would, indeed, that they were untrue. Patroclus has fallen, and a fight is raging about his naked body, for Hector holds his armor. A dark cloud of grief fell upon Achilles as he listened. He filled both hands with dust from off the ground and poured it over his head, disfiguring his comely face, and letting the refuse settle over his shirt so fair and new. He flung himself down, all huge and hugely at full length, and tore his hair with his hands. The bondswomen, whom Achilles and Patroclus had taken captive, screamed aloud for grief, beating their breasts, and with their limbs failing them for sorrow. Antilochus bent over him the while, weeping and holding his hands as he lay groaning, for he feared that he might plunge the knife into his own throat. Then Achilles gave a loud cry, and his mother heard him as she was sitting in the depths of the sea by the old man her father, whereon she screamed, and all the goddesses, daughters of Nereus, that dwelt at the bottom of the sea, came gathering round her. There were Glauce, Thalian, Cymodocea, Nesia, Speo, Theo, and dark-eyed Hale, Simathoe, Acte, and Lemnoria, Melite, Iera, Amphiothe, and Agave, Doto and Proto, Pharusa and Dynamene, Dexamene and Phinamene, and Calianera, Doris Panope, and the famous sea nymph Galatea, Nemertes, Asputis, and Calianassa. There were also Clymene, Inaria, and Ionessa, Maera, Oriathuia, and Amithia of the lovely locks, with other Nereids who dwelt in the depths of the sea. The crystal cave was filled with their multitude, and they all beat their breasts, while Tethys led them in their lament. Listen, she cried, sisters, daughters of Nereus, that you may hear the burden of my sorrows. Alas, woe is me, woe in that I have borne the most glorious of offspring. I bore him fair and strong, hero among heroes, and he shot up as a sapling. I tended him as a plant in a goodly garden, and sent him with his ships to Ilius to fight the Trojans. But never shall I welcome him back to the house of Peleus. So long as he lives to look upon the light of the sun, he is in heaviness, and though I go to him, I cannot help him. Nevertheless, I will go, that I may see my dear son, and learn what sorrow has befallen him, though he is still holding aloof from battle. She left the cave as she spoke, while the others followed weeping after, and the waves opened a path before them. When they reached the rich plain of Troy, they came up out of the sea in a long line onto the sands at the place where the ships of the Myrmidons were drawn up in close order round the tents of Achilles. His mother went up to him as he lay groaning. She laid her hand upon his head and spoke piteously, saying, "My son, why are you thus weeping? What sorrow has now befallen you? Tell me, hide it not from me. Surely Jove has granted you the prayer you made him, and when you lifted up your hands and besought him that the Achaeans might all of them be pent up at their ships and rue it bitterly, and that you were no longer with them." Achilles groaned and answered, "Mother, Olympian Jove has indeed vouchsafed me the fulfillment of my prayer, but what boots is it to me, seeing that my dear comrade Patroclus has fallen, he whom I valued more than all the others, and loved as dearly as my own life. I have lost him, I, and Hector, when he stripped the wondrous armor, so glorious to behold, which the gods gave to Peleus when they laid you on the couch of a mortal man. Would that you were still dwelling among the immortal sea nymphs, and that Peleus had taken himself some mortal bride. For now you shall have grief infinite by reason of the death of that son whom you can never welcome home. Nay, I will not live nor go about among mankind unless Hector fall by my spear, and thus pay me for having slain Patroclus, son of Menenius." Tethys wept and answered, "Then, my son, is your end near at hand, for your own death awaits you soon, full soon after that of Hector." And then Achilles, in his great grief, "I would die here and now, and that I could not save my comrade. He has fallen far from home, and in his hour of need my hand was not there to help him. What is there for me? Return to my own land I shall not, and have brought no savings neither to Patroclus nor to my other comrades, of whom so many have been slain by mighty Hector. I stay here by my ships, a bootless burden upon the earth. I, who in fight have no peer among the Achaeans, though in council they are better than I. Therefore perish strife both from among gods and men in anger, wherein even a righteous man will harden his heart, which rises up in the soul of man like smoke, and the taste thereof is as sweeter than drops of honey. Even so has Agamemnon angered me, and yet so be it, for it is over. I will force my soul into subjection, as I needs must. I will go. I will pursue Hector, who has slain him whom I love so dearly, and I will then abide my doom when it may please Jove and the other gods to send it. Even Hercules, the best beloved of Jove, even he could not escape the hand of death, but fate and Juno's fierce anger laid him low, as I too shall lie when I am dead, if I like doom awaits me. Till then, I will win fame, and I will bid Trojan and Dardanian women wring tears from their tender cheeks with both their hands in their grievousness of their great sorrow. Thus shall they know that he who has held aloof so long will hold aloof no longer. Hold me not back, therefore, in the love you bear me, for you shall not move me." Then silver-footed Tethys answered, "My son, what you have said is true. It is well to save your comrades from destruction, but your armor is in the hands of the Trojans. Hector bears it in triumph upon his own shoulders. Full well I know that his vaunts shall not be lasting, for his end is close at hand. Go not, however, into the press of battle till you see me return hither. Tomorrow, at break of day, I shall be here, and I will bring you goodly armor from King Vulcan." On this she left her brave son, and as she turned away she said to the sea nymphs, her sisters, "Dive into the bosom of the sea, and go to the house of the old sea god, my father. Tell him everything. As for me, I will go to the cunning workman Vulcan on high Olympus, and ask him to provide my son with a suit of splendid armor." When she had so said, they dived forthwith beneath the waves, while silver-footed Tethys went her way, that she might bring the armor for her son. Thus, then, did her feet bear the goddess to Olympus, and meanwhile the Achaeans were flying with loud cries before murderous Hector, till they reached the ships and the Hellespont, and they could not draw the body of Mars's servant Patroclus out of the reach of the weapons that were showered upon him, for Hector, son of Priam, with his host and horsemen, had again caught up to him like the flame of a fiery furnace. Thrice did brave Hector seize him by the feet, striving with might and main to draw him away, and calling loudly on the Trojans. And thrice did the two Ajaxes, clothed in valor as with a garment, beat him off from the body. But all undaunted he would now charge into the thick of the fight, and now again he would stand still and cry aloud, but he would give no ground. As upland shepherds that cannot chase some famished lion from a carcass, even so could not the two Ajaxes scare Hector, son of Priam, from the body of Patroclus. And now he would even have dragged it off, and have won imperishable glory, had not Iris, fleet as the wind, winged her way as messenger from Olympus to the son of Peleus and bidden him arm. She came secretly, without the knowledge of Jove and the other gods, for Juno had sent her, and when she got close to him she said, "Up, son of Peleus, mightiest of all mankind, rescue Patroclus, about whom this fearful fright is now raging by the ships. Men are killing one another, the Danaans in defense of the dead body, while the Trojans are trying to hale it away and take it to one Delius. Hector is the most furious of them all, for he is cutting the head from the body and fixing it on the stakes of the wall. Up then and bide here no longer, shrink from the thought that Patroclus may become meat for the dogs of Troy. Shame on you, should his body suffer any kind of outrage." And Achilles said, "Iris, which of the gods was it that sent you to me?" Iris answered, "It was Juno, the royal spouse of Jove, but the son of Saturn does not know of my coming, nor yet does any of the other immortals who dwell on the snowy summits of Olympus." Then fleet Achilles answered her, saying, "How can I go up into the battle? They have my armor. My mother forbade me to arm till I should see her come, for she promised to bring me goodly armor from Vulcan. I know no man whose arms I can put on, save only the shield of Ajax, son of Telamon, and he surely must be fighting in the front rank and wielding his spear about the dead body of dead Patroclus." Iris said, "We know that your armor has been taken, but go as you are, go into the deep trench and show yourself before the Trojans, that they may fear you and cease fighting. Thus will the fainting sons of the Achaeans gain some brief breathing time, which in battle may hardly be." Iris left him when she had so spoken, but Achilles, dear to Jove, arose, and Minerva flung her tasseled aegis round his strong shoulders. She crowned his head with a halo of golden cloud, from which she kindled a glow of gleaming fire. As the smoke that goes up into heaven from some city that is being beleaguered on an island far out at sea, all day long do men sally from the city and fight their hardest, and at the going down of the sun the lines of beacon fires blaze forth, flaring high for those that dwell near them to behold. If so be that they may come with their ships and succor them, even so did the light flare from the head of Achilles, as he stood by the trench, going beyond the wall. But he had not joined the Achaeans, for he heeded the charge which his mother laid upon him. There did he stand and shout aloud. Minerva also raised her voice from afar, and spread terror unspeakable among the Trojans. Ringing, as the note of a trumpet that sounds alarm, then the foe is at the gate of a city, even so brazen was the voice of the son of Achilles. And when the Trojans heard its clarion tones, they were dismayed. The horses turned back with their chariots, for they boded mischief, and their drivers were all struck by the steady flame which the great-eyed goddess had kindled above the head of the great son of Peleus. Thrice did Achilles raise his loud cry as he stood by the trench, and thrice were the Trojans and their brave allies thrown into confusion, whereon 12 of their noblest champions fell beneath the wheels of their chariots and perished by their own spears. The Achaeans, to their great joy, then drew Patroclus out of reach of the weapons and laid him on a litter. His comrades stood mourning round him, and among them fleet Achilles, who wept bitterly as he saw his true comrade lying dead upon his bier. He had sent him out with horses and chariots into battle, but his return he was not to welcome. Then Juno sent the busy sun, loath though he was, into the waters of Oceanus. So he set, and the Achaeans had rest from the tug and turmoil of war. Now the Trojans, when they had come out of the fight, unyoked their horses and gathered in assembly before preparing their supper. They kept their feet, nor would any dare to sit down, for fear had fallen upon them all, because Achilles had shown himself after having held aloof so long from battle. Polydamas, son of Pantheus, was the first to speak, a man of judgment, who alone among them could look both before and after. He was comrade to Hector, and they had been born upon the same night. With all sincerity and goodwill, therefore, he addressed them thus. Look to it well, my friends. I would urge you to go back now to your city and not wait here by the ships till morning, for we are far from our walls. So long as this man was at enmity with Agamemnon, the Achaeans were easier to deal with, and I would have gladly camped by the ships in the hope of taking them. But now I go in great fear of the fleet son of Peleus. He is so daring that he will never bide here on the plain, whereupon the Trojans and Achaeans fight with equal valor. But he will try to storm our city and carry off our women. Do then as I say, and let us retreat, for this is what will happen. The darkness of night will for a time stay the son of Peleus, but if he finds us here in the morning when he sallies forth in full armor, we shall have knowledge of him in good earnest. Glad indeed will be he who can escape and get back to Iliad, and many a Trojan will become meat for dogs and vultures. May I never live to hear it. If we do as I say, little though we may like it, we shall have strength and counsel during the night, and the great gates with the doors that will close them will protect the city. At dawn we can arm and take our stand on the walls. He will then rue it if he sallies from the ships to fight us. He will go back when he has given his horses their fill of being driven all withers under our walls, and will be in no mind to try and force his way into the city. Neither will he ever sack it. Dogs shall devour him ere he do so. Hector looked furiously at him and answered, Polydamas, your words are not to my liking, in that you bid us to go back and be pent within the city. Have you not had enough of being cooped up behind walls? In the old days the city of Priam was famous, the whole world over, for its wealth of gold and bronze, but our treasures are wasted out of our houses, and much goods have been sold away to Phrygia and fair Meonia, for the hand of Jove has been laid heavily upon us. Now, therefore, that the son of scheming Saturn has vouchsafed me to win glory here, and him the Achaeans enter their ships, prate no more in this fool's wise among the people. You will have no man with you, it shall not be. Do all of you as I now say, take your suppers and your companies throughout the host, and keep your watches, and be wakeful every man of you. If any Trojan is uneasy about his possessions, let him gather them, and give them out among the people. Better let these, rather than the Achaeans, have them. At daybreak we will arm and fight about the ships, granted that Achilles has again come forward to defend them. Let it be as he will, but it shall go hard with him. I shall not shun him, but I will fight him, to fall or conquer. The god of war deals out like measure to all, and the slayer may yet be slain. Thus spoke Hector, and the Trojans, fools that they were, shouted in applause, for Pallas Minerva had robbed them of their understanding. They gave ear to Hector with his evil counsel, but the wise words of Polydamas no man would heed. They took their supper throughout the host, and meanwhile, through the whole night, the Achaeans mourned Patroclus, and the son of Peleus led them in their lament. He laid his murderous hands upon the breast of his comrade, groaning again and again, as a bearded lion when a man who was chasing deer has robbed him of his young in some dense forest. When the lion comes back, he is furious, and searches dingle and dell to track the hunter if he can find him, for he is mad with rage. Even so did many a sigh did Achilles speak among the Myrmidons, saying, Alas, vain were the words with which I cheered the hero Menenidas in his own house. I said that I would bring his brave son back again to Opius, after he had sacked Iliad and taken his share of the spoils, but Jove does not give all men their heart's desire. The same soil shall be reddened here at Troy by the blood of us both, for I too shall never be welcomed home by the old knight Peleus, nor by my mother Tethys, but even in this place shall the earth cover me. Nevertheless, O Patroclus, now that I am left behind you, I will not bury you, till I have brought hither the head and armor of mighty Hector, who has slain you. 12 noble sons of Trojan will I behead before your bier to avenge you. Till I have done so you shall lie as you are by the ships, and fair women of Troy and Dardanus, whom we have taken with the spear and strength of arm when we sacked men's goodly cities, shall weep over you, both night and day. Then Achilles told his men to set a large tripod on the fire, that they might wash the clotted gore from off Patroclus. Thereon they set a tripod full of bath water onto a clear fire. They threw sticks on it to make it blaze, and the water became hot as the flame played about the belly of the tripod. When the water in the cauldron was boiling, they washed the body, anointed it with oil, and closed its wounds with ointment that had been kept 9 years. Then they laid it on a bier, and covered it with a linen cloth from head to foot, and over this they laid a fair white robe. Thus, all night long did the Myrmidons gather round Achilles to mourn Patroclus. Then Jove said to Juno, his sister wife, "So, Queen Juno, you have gained your end and have roused fleet Achilles. One would think that the Achaeans were your own flesh and blood." And Juno answered, "Dread son of Saturn, why should you say this thing? May not a man, though he be only mortal and knows less than we do what he can for another person? And shall not I, foremost of all goddesses, both by descent and as wife to you, who reign in heaven, devise evil for the Trojans if I am angry with them?" Thus did they converse. Meanwhile Tethys came to the house of Vulcan, imperishable, star-bespangled, fairest of the abodes in heaven, a house of bronze, wrought by the lame god's own hands. She found him, busy with his bellows, sweating and hard at work, for he was making 20 tripods that were to stand by the wall of his house, and he set wheels of gold under them so that they might go of their own selves to the assemblies of the gods and come back again. Marvels, indeed, to see. They were finished, all but the years of cunning workmanship which yet remained to be fixed to them. These he was now fixing, and he was hammering at the rivets. While he was thus at work, silver-footed Tethys came to his house. Charis, of graceful headdress, wife to the far-famed lame god, came towards her as soon as she saw her and took her hand in her own, saying, "Why have you come to our house, Tethys, honored and ever welcome? For you do not visit us often. Come inside and let me set refreshment before you." The goddess left the way as she spoke, and bade Tethys sit on a richly decorated seat inlaid with silver. There was a footstool, also, under her feet. Then she called to Vulcan and said, "Vulcan, come here. Tethys wants you." And the far-famed lame god answered, "Then it is indeed an august and honored goddess who has come here. She it was that took care of me when I was suffering from the heavy fall which I had through my cruel mother's anger, for she would have got rid of me because I was lame. It would have gone hardly with me had not Eurynomé, daughter of the ever-encircling waters of Oceanus, and Tethys taken me to their bosom. 9 years did I stay with them, and many beautiful works in bronze, brooches, spiral armlets, cups, and chains did I make for them in their cave, with the roaring waters of Oceanus foaming as they rushed ever past it. And no one knew, neither of gods nor men, save only Tethys and Eurynomé, who took care of me. If, then, Tethys has come to my house, I must make her due requital for having saved me. Entertain her, therefore, with all hospitality, while I put my bellows and all my tools." On this, the mighty monster hobbled off from his anvil, his thin legs plying lustily under him. He set the bellows away from the fire and gathered his tools in a silver chest. Then he took a sponge and washed his face and hands, his shaggy chest and brawny neck. He donned his shirt, grasped his strong staff, and limped towards the door. There were golden handmaids also who worked for him, and were like real young women, with sense and reason, voice also and strength, and all the learning of the immortals. These busied themselves as the king bade them, while he drew near to Tethys, seated her upon a goodly seat, and took her hand in his own, saying, "Why have you come to our house, Tethys, honored and ever welcome, for you do not visit us often? Say what you want, and I will do it for you at once if I can, and if it can be done at all." Tethys wept and answered, "Vulcan, is there another goddess in Olympus whom the son of Saturn has been pleased to try with so much affliction as he has me? Me alone of the marine goddesses did he make subject to a mortal husband, Peleus, son of Achilles, and sorely against my will did I submit to the embraces of one who was but mortal, and who now stays at home, worn out with age. Neither is this all. Heaven vouchsafed me a son, hero among heroes, and he shot up as a sapling. I tended him as a plant in a goodly garden, and sent him with his ships to Iliad to fight the Trojans. But never shall I welcome him back to the house of Peleus. So long as he lives to look upon the light of the sun, he is in heaviness, and though I go to him, I cannot help him. King Agamemnon has made him give up the maiden whom the sons of the Achaeans had awarded him, and he wastes with sorrow for her sake." Then the Trojans hemmed in the Achaeans, in at their ships' sterns, and would not let them come forth. The elders, therefore, of the Argives besought Achilles, and offered him great treasure, whereon he refused to bring deliverance to them himself, but put his own armor on Patroclus, and sent him into the fight with much people after him. All day long they fought by the Scaean gates, and would have taken the city there and then, had not Apollo vouchsafed glory to Hector, and slain the valiant son of Menenidas, after he had done the Trojans much evil. Therefore I am suppliant at your knees, if haply you may be pleased to provide my son, whose end is near at hand, with helmet and shield, with goodly greaves fitted with ankle clasps, and with a breastplate. For he lost his own when his true comrade fell at the hands of the Trojans, and he now lies stretched on earth in the bitterness of his soul." And Vulcan answered, "Take heart, and be no more disquieted about this matter. Would that I could hide him from death's sight when his hour is come, so surely as I can find him armor that shall amaze the eyes of all who behold it." When he had said so, he left her and went to his bellows, turning them towards the fire and bidding them to do their office. 20 bellows blew upon the melting pots, and they blew blasts of every kind, some fierce to help him when he had need of them, and others less strong as Vulcan welded in the course of his work. He threw tough copper in the fire, and tin with silver and gold. He set his great anvil on its block, and with one hand grasped the mighty hammer, while he took tongs in the other. First, he shaped the shield so great and strong, adorning it all over and binding it round with a gleaming circuit in 3 layers, and the baldric was made of silver. He made the shield in 5 thicknesses, and with many a wonder did his cunning hand enrich it. He wrought the earth, the heavens, and the sea, the moon also at her full, and the untiring sun, with all the signs that glorify the face of heaven, the Pleiads, the Hyads, huge Orion, and the Bear, which men also call the Wain, and which turns round ever in one place, facing. Orion, and alone, never dips into the stream of Oceanus. He wrought also 2 cities, fair to see and busy with the hum of men. In the one were weddings and wedding feasts, and they were going about their city with brides, whom they were escorting by torchlight from their chambers. Loud rose the cry of Hymen, and the youths danced to the music of flute and lyre, while the women stood, each at her house door, to see them. Meanwhile, the people were gathered in assembly, for there was a quarrel, and 2 men were wrangling about the blood money for a man who had been killed. The one saying before the people that he had paid damages in full, and the other that he had not been paid. Each was trying to make his own case good, and the people took sides, each man backing the side that he had taken. But the heralds kept them back, and the elders sat on their seats of stone in a solemn circle, holding the staves which the heralds had put in their hands. Then they rose, and each in his turn gave judgment, and there were 2 talents laid down, to be given to him whose judgment should be deemed the fairest. About the other city there lay encamped 2 hosts in gleaming armor, and they were divided whether to sack it or to spare it, and accept half of what it contained. But the men of the city would not yet consent, and armed themselves for a surprise. Their wives and little children kept guard upon the walls, and with them were the men who were past fighting through age. But the others sallied forth, with Mars and Pallas Minerva at their head, both of them wrought in gold and clad in golden raiment, great and fair with their armor as befitting gods, while they that followed were smaller. When they reached the place where they would lay their ambush, it was on a riverbed, to which livestock of all kinds would come far and near to water. Here, then, they lay concealed, clad in full armor. Some way off them there were 2 scouts who had come on the lookout for the coming of sheep and cattle, which presently came, followed by 2 shepherds who were playing on their pipes, and had not so much as the thought of danger. When those who were in ambush saw this, they cut off the flocks and herds and killed the shepherds. Meanwhile, the besiegers, when they heard much noise among the cattle as they sat in council, sprang to their horses and made with all speed towards them. When they reached them, they set battle in array on the banks of the river, and the host aimed their bronze-shod spears at one another. With them were strife and riot, and fell Fate, who was dragging 3 men after her, one with a fresh wound, and the other unwounded, while the third was dead, and she was dragging him along by his heel, and her robe was bedrabbled in men's blood. They went in and out with one another, and fought as though they were living people, hailing away one another's dead. He wrought also a fair fallow field, large and thrice plowed already. Many men were working at the plow within it, turning their oxen to and fro, furrow after furrow. Each time that they turned on reaching the headland, a man would come up to them and give them a cup of wine, and they would go back to their furrows, looking forward to the time when they should again reach the headland. The part that they had plowed was dark behind them, so that the field, though it was of gold, still looked as if it were being plowed. Very curious to behold. He wrought also a field of harvest corn, and the reapers were reaping with sharp sickles in their hand. Swath after swath fell to the ground in a straight line behind them, and the binders bound them in bands of twisted straw. There were 3 binders, and behind them were boys who gathered the cut corn in armfuls, and kept on bringing them to be bound. Among them all, the owner of the land stood by in silence and was glad. The servants were getting a meal ready under an oak, for they had sacrificed a great ox, and were busy cutting him up, while the women were making a porridge of much white barley for the laborers' dinner. He wrought also a vineyard, golden and fair to see, and the vines were loaded with grapes. The bunches overhead were black, but the vines were trained on poles of silver. He ran a ditch of dark metal all around it, and fenced it with a fence of tin. There was only one path to it, and by this the vintagers went when they would gather the vintage. Youths and maidens, all blithe and full of glee, carried the luscious fruit in plated baskets, and with them there went a boy who could make sweet music with his lyre, and sang the linus song with his clear, boyish voice. He wrought also a herd of homed cattle. He made the cows of gold and tin, and they lowed as they come full speed out of the yards to go and feed among the waving reeds that grow by the banks of the river. Along with the cattle there went 4 shepherds, all of them in gold, and their 9 fleet dogs went with them. 2 terrible lions had fastened on a bellowing bull that was with the foremost cows, and bellow as he might they hailed him, while the dogs and men gave chase. The lions tore through the bull's thick hide, and were gorging on his blood and bowels. But the herdsmen were afraid to do anything, and only hounded on their dogs. The dogs dared not fasten on the lions, but stood by barking and keeping out of harm's way. The god wrought also a pasture in a fair mountain dell, and a large flock of sheep, with a homestead and huts, and sheltered sheepfolds. Furthermore, he wrought a green, like that which Daedalus once made in Knossos for lovely Ariadne. Hereon they danced youths and maidens, whom all would woo, with their hands on one another's wrists. The maidens wore robes of light linen, and the youths well-woven shirts that were slightly oiled. The girls were crowned with garlands, while the young men had daggers of gold that hung by silver baldricks. Sometimes they would dance deftly in a ring with merry, twinkling feet, as it were a potter sitting at his work and making trial of his wheel to see whether it will run, and sometimes they would go all in a line with one another, and much people was gathered joyously about the green. There was a bard, also, to sing to them and play his lyre, while 2 tumblers went about performing in the midst of them while the man struck up with his tune. All round the outermost rim of the shield he set the mighty stream of the river Oceanus. Then, when he had fashioned the shield so great and strong, he made a breastplate also that shone brighter than fire. He made helmet close fitting to the brow and richly worked, with a golden plume overhanging it. And he made greaves also of beaten tin. And lastly, when the famed lame god had made all the armor, he took it and set it before the mother of Achilles, whereon she darted like a falcon from the sunny snowets of Olympus, and bore away the gleaming armor from the house of Vulcan. And that's going to bring us to the end of chapter 18. Hopefully I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a not too difficult topic. I didn't have a whole lot to add, so there can be a whole lot of confusion. This is a reading into the record. Once again, there's not a whole lot to extrapolate upon. It is interesting to note all of the detail that went into the shield. I enjoy that kind of thing. If you didn't know, I used to be a blacksmith, and that's a lot of work we're talking about. But regardless, if you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, a share, a follow, throw me a comment if you agree or disagree with anything. Put it in the box down below, and if it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. If there is another work you would like to see me read or discuss, drop that in the comments down below as well. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks, with a membership, or pick up a copy of my book from the link provided down below. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitt's Take. Peace.